Welcome to CharityVillage Connects. I'm Mary Barrell. Well, what a difference a few months make in politics. Canada has a new Prime Minister with the election of Mark Carney and yet another minority Liberal government. The closest competitor, the Conservative Party, lost after the evaporation of its massive 26-point lead in the polls, notwithstanding gaining its highest popular vote in decades, even while its leader, Pierre Poilievre, lost his seat, as did the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh. All this in the shadow of Donald Trump and the existential threat of his tariffs on the Canadian economy, not to mention the continuing threats of annexation as the 51st state. But what now? And more importantly for Canada's nonprofit sector, what will the outcome of the election mean? What are the anticipated policy shifts, funding implications, and what should nonprofit leaders be watching for in the months ahead? To help us navigate these important issues, we're joined by Jean-Marc Mangin, the president and CEO of Philanthropic Foundations Canada. He currently sits on the Government of Canada's Advisory Committee on the Charitable Sector. Prior to PFC, Jean-Marc served as the executive director of the Federation for the Humanities and Social Sciences, the largest national organization of Canadian researchers and scholars. He's also had a long career serving in international development with the UN, NGOs, and the Canadian government in responding to global humanitarian disasters and development challenges. Welcome back to CharityVillage Connects, Jean-Marc.
It's my pleasure, Mary.
From your perspective, how might the Liberal win, particularly under a leader like Mark Carney, impact the landscape for philanthropic foundations in Canada?
Well, the Liberal win doesn't change the fact that we are entering a recession. And that's, I think, part of the reason why they got elected, the anguish that the existential threats that you referred to are creating. So the question is not if a recession is how deep a recession. So obviously in the recessionary time, it's got a direct impact on Canadian. The level of needs will increase. The ability of the sector to respond to it will be stretched. And in a time where today was a throne speech delivered by the King, the very clear that the intent of this government is to lead the greatest transformation of our economy since World War II, and so the impact on the social safety net of that effort will be great. And the demand, both on the granting side, but also on the investment side on foundation, will also be significant.
So I guess I wanted to talk to you in particular because looking ahead over the next year, what do you anticipate being some of the key economic challenges impacting the nonprofit sector? I mean, one of the big issues has been, and it certainly was mentioned in the throne speech, energy, focus on housing. Foundations, as we know, raise funds through their investment portfolios. So anything that hurts the markets or the economy generally impact the revenues raised by foundations. And clearly, the government has signaled that their focus is on spending for the purposes of rebuilding the security of Canada and the economy. Is that your understanding? And how do you see that impacting the nonprofit sector?
No, so it's also my understanding. Now, the government, in the Trump speech was repeated again today, intends to control the operational side of expenditures. So even though there's a promise not to cut any transfer payment to provinces and individuals, it's hard to see how they're going to square the circle of massive new investment on the investment side of on the housing front of our national infrastructure and defense, and at the same time keeping a lid on operational expenditures without touching any of the transfer payments schedule. I like many of the observers, the maths are rather challenging in the context of a recession where the economic pie will decline, when the tax revenues are likely to decline. So there's going to be a great deal of pressure on this government to achieve its ambitious goals. So and my concern is that all government, not only at the federal level but provincial and municipality as well, will look at the not-for-profit and charitable sector as a gap filler, and we simply don't have the resources to replace tens of billions of dollars that may be missing from government to the table. Governments and provincial governments in particular remain the most important funder of the social safety net. The charities, Canadian individual giving and foundation help, but they in the overall scheme of things, they are a complementary partner to government funding. We're not a substitute. We're not a gap filler. We can support social innovation on some of these important files and do it faster than government. So we can help government achieve their goals, but we cannot substitute ourselves for their role or their funding.
That's very interesting as an observation. So we certainly saw Carney running on the promise to be able to provide government support should the tariffs impact companies and causing folks to lose their jobs and increasing unemployment. We've already seen increasing unemployment in recent weeks. I'm curious whether we didn't hear that in the actual throne speech. I don't think it necessarily means they've turned away from that goal, but do you not see some of that support coming through the nonprofit sector?
At this point, in terms of tariff-related expenditures, this government has promised, I think they intend to do it, is to any tariff revenue will be targeted to the industries and to the employees affected directly by tariffs. So they might be some temporary programs that are put in place, some of the new investment and access to EI that's facilitated through that, and we're going to see before the end of June some of the expenditures. They have not been part of a conversation of that. Charities and foundations are expected to be part of that response, of that immediate response to tariffs. I'm part of a conversation where we are that the government is looking for partners in terms of this catalytic investment they're seeking from the private sector, that also looking at the philanthropic sector as a potential partner, especially in the space around housing. Because the scale of effort that's required goes beyond what government can bring to the table, goes way beyond what philanthropy can come to the table. But collectively, if private sector, philanthropy, government, yes, we can move the needle. If and here I'm giving the skill set that Prime Minister Carney brings to the table of his knowledge, his interest to leverage the balance sheet of the partners. I think foundation could play a very useful contribution. Is some of their investment that are being de-risked, so that by government removing some of the risk of these investments and saying, we can ensure either through bonds or through loan guarantees that within a 20-year period span of a specific housing investment, for example, we remove if for any reason the investment does not turn a profit, as 5%, we'll guarantee at least 5%. And that, and when people build a portfolio, and we all have money instruments on our respective portfolio, that could be quite enticing. So if the de-risking is done effectively and through market templates and infrastructure the government has given itself over the years, that it could attract investment not only from the foundation but from the private sector. Many of our members have a family office that runs the business, and then they have the foundation that runs a philanthropic arm. So that would raise some interest from some of the potentially from some of the members if the signals are effective. Again, in the context of high volatility, the tendency is not to invest. So to attract, giving what government is giving itself is and giving a mandate by the Canadian people to transform the economy. And I think there's an interest for foundations to contribute, but you had to make it in such a way that the risk profile of these investment is quite low, so that foundation could sustain the granting, because they invest the income, the interest income or the earnings from the investment pays for the granting over time. So that to sustain both side of the equation is I think that there's possible win-win proposition that could emerge.
That's very interesting. So, in a way, the sophistication of Mark Carney's understanding how the economy works and how investment works could be very helpful if he's sensitive to the needs to show that there is certainly a risk aversion, particularly for potential partners who might invest in these huge, I guess, nation-changing sort of projects that he wants to pursue, and that might make it easier for foundations to actually join as partners. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, you understand me correctly. One of my concern is the in terms of risk aversion is not only on the foundation side; it's the public service itself. It's not used to these kinds of partnership. And they tend to look at the granting side of what foundation do, that can add a constitutional return, and we encourage them to look at Trulia as an investment partner, so as an early investment partner that could send a signal to the wider market that these are serious investment ventures and make economic sense and make sense for in terms of protecting our national sovereignty and reimagining our economy. But in many instances, to attract significant investment, you're going to need to de-risk it. So there's a range of ways that the government could do that. As I mentioned, I think Mark Carney in particular has a skill set to do that. Some of these people they attracted in cabinet as well to have a background in this area, but it's not within the public service. It's not it would be developing and flexing new muscles, and on a day-to-day basis, these are the colleagues we work with. So the political signals have to be clear. The incentive structure for the public service to work in different ways has to be clear. Now, the throne speech and the mandate letter that we saw last week and the election, Prime Minister Carney also committed to transform government. So I think he's aware of the challenges that we have in terms of delivering on promises as a government of different colors and hues over the years, and we have a public service that's been actively discouraged from taking risk. And this time around, we do need to move fast. It does imply making risk. It does imply that some programs investment will be failures. But we have sufficient gain in building that new infrastructure that overall it lays the ground for the prosperity the renewed prosperity for Canada. So that culture of risk, I think, applies to us as foundation sector, also applies to our partners in the public sector, and more broadly to the private sector as well.
This is a great insight for me to understand from you. I'm curious whether are you now in the stages of actually advocating for a different way of working with foundations, so it's not just a dependence on foundations as a grant making organization, but rather as an investment partner, especially on these big projects that could, certainly transform Canadian society and our economy.
Yeah, this is not totally new. I mean, the PFC, Philanthropic Foundations Canada, Community Foundations of Canada in 2012 supported a goal that the 10% of our investment should be for impact investment, so align with the mission and to contribute to the public good, while still having a return. And could be anywhere from food security to climate technology to housing. Housing being the bulk of most of what the impact investment is going towards. We have a huge affordable housing crisis in this country. So the new government intends to create a new agency and speed up the process. They're gonna be needing partners at the table, and we are sending PFC is sending a very clear signal to our government partners that we are ready to be a partner at the table.
I'm curious about your recently published report called Trump 2.0 and U.S. Philanthropy, Reflections and Actions for Canadian Philanthropic Foundations. Why was it important to publish this report at this time? Is this sort of some of the content that's in it? Can you tell us and our listeners about some of the findings and recommendations?
No, it's very clear that the second Trump administration is quite different from the first. And the systematic dismantling of state capacity, of long-term standing programs, of USAID, the attacks on university and foundation, and we see it most spectacularly with Harvard when there's new announcement almost daily. Some of the fragility of the media space in the States, where there's some real desert where people don't have access to evidence-based news, and so the fragility of the U.S. democracy at this time is very concerning, and initially, we with several members. Okay, what's actually happening in the U.S. Was that kind of this small picture that I just outlined, but also what are foundations doing. So by the time of our report, unfortunately, there was in terms of public response, there was very little. This has changed since the report was issued. And there's an increasing number of foundation and of organizations that represent foundation that say, we have to take a stand. There's no point playing dead or having a low profile. That this government intends to destroy any kind of civil society kind of organizational voices that may be perceived having a different agenda than the government. It goes beyond liberal conservative, like is any autonomous source of perceived power. And so there's an increasing number of foundations that are taking action to protect their partners, to protect themselves, and to take a stand. Obviously, it's not stopping the action of the administration, But there's a form of resistance that has emerged since the report was published. By the time we published the report, it was, as you can read, it was surprisingly quiet. There was a lot of conversation behind the scene that our research indicated, but we had yet to see collective action and by many. Now we are starting to see that. Now, the threats are real. They have nothing to do with it. It is so different from the Canadian context. The fact that until the very last hours of the budget bill that's going through the House and now it's gone to the Senate, add a clause that they give the power to the Treasury Department to remove charitable status to any organization that it sees fit if it believes that supports forms of terrorism without defining what terrorism is. And there's already instruments and that the government has, as the government of Canada has, to, if there are actual support to terrorist activities, government could stop that very, very easily. But this was a power that, like the NGO kill bill, like that specific clause has been removed from the bill, but giving the ongoing negotiation between the House and the Senate could find its way back, and there are proposals to increase tax on endowments that we don't have in Canada. They are and for large universities like Harvard, it could go up to 20% of their endowment. So like it could have a reflection of killing that tool within a few years. For other foundations of smaller size, it's nowhere as high as 20%. It's more like 10 or sometimes 5. And for very small foundation, community foundation, they're not being targeted at this time. But it's again that divide and rule. Like, let's go after a few, scare the others. So to try to stop massive mobilization around that. So the impact on real people is significant. I mean, with the cuts to USAID, the cuts to national program, people will die or are dying. The national care system. So it's a battle for Americans to fight, not for Canadians. But in terms of our positioning in the world, I mean, these are that the rollback on this attack on values that are dear to the great majority of Canadians, and we've seen that the support for diversity, equity, and inclusion in Canada remains strong. We're not immune from some of the attack, and I think the government will do less virtue signaling, but the work will continue. So I'm hopeful the work will continue on reconciliation, on gender, the support to new immigrant, to Black communities. So the important work, I'm hopeful, will still continue, but probably be less virtue signaling that we had from the previous government. In terms of our role with our positioning with other liberal democracy with a small L, it's important for Canada to, as a system that we've known since World War II is collapsing, what will emerge reflects as much as possible our values, and we saw that in the Trump speech today. Seeing that, because the democracies in Western Europe and Australia also feel the internal threat to so. It's in French. It's like we had could like we the elbow up I guess in English the expression during the election. So I do want to, because time is wrapping up, but the context in the US is so radically different from the one in Canada. We're not immune to some of the erosion of democracy, so we have to pay close attention. There is, I just came out from a very interesting conversation with several members. It's several initiatives to support the media space, to address online aid, to see what could be done to for Canadians to understand the importance of the charter. So this interesting piece of work that's happening to reflect also some of the erosion in Canada, but it is nowhere close to the attacks, that systematic attacks that we've seen from a kleptocracy that we don't have in Canada.
But I guess to wrap up, I mean, your last sort of thoughts, what advice do you have for foundations or other people in the nonprofit sector to position their organizations strategically for the year ahead? I mean, I guess it's to stand on guard.
Yeah. So they look at your charitable purpose and your mission. Is it still and that mission is expressed in terms of actual strategy? Is the most effective in the current context? So we are trying to help our foundations members across the country to make sense of the moment, and then each of them to decide if any alteration are required, both on the granting side and on the investment. My message I'm giving is like more will be expected of us, and we need to be at the forefront of these efforts to protect our national sovereignty, national prosperity, and to make sure that effort includes all Canadians. And there's been a massive mobilization by Canadians over since Trump 2 has come back into power. So let's build on that. And regardless of our political difference or regional differences, I think there's a strong sense of national emergency, national unity, and philanthropy in the charitable sector as a lot to, as is the tie that binds us as a society comes from the sector, and they're under a great deal of pressure, and we have to ensure that work is as relevant as possible in a context that will remain extremely difficult moving forward.
Jean-Marc, I couldn't agree with you more that the nonprofit sector reflects the values that we hold dear as Canadians. It's a pleasure speaking with you again and hearing your important insights on the present and future challenges facing the Canadian charitable sector in these very uncertain times. Thank you for joining Charity Village Connects.